Are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's do it.
All right, let me start with this. Here is Marcus Freeman on one of his running backs. It is a guy named Aneyas Williams.
This is a guy that we identified in camp, had a lot of talent. And I remember when we offered him right after camp. And he had a great senior year. He came here with a lot of ability, but he had to earn trust. Can you get your job done? Can you do exactly what your coach wants you to do over and over and over? And all he's done is continue to earn more trust throughout the season. And at first it was more just, hey, trust in the pass game, like can he protect and get his job done? And now you can put him in there at any moment. Run game, pass game, get the ball in his hands, throw the ball to him. He's going to protect. He's a tough guy. And I love it because it just shows that he's put the work in. Because everybody that comes into our program has talent. Like we've identified that. We're not going to bring you into our program if you don't have talent. But the ability to get you to play starts with your ability to play fast, right? And so what Anias has done is he's expedited that process through work, through intentional work, not just the work that everybody does in 20 hours. He's putting extra work to expedite the process of playing fast, playing physical, and getting his job done. And so credit to him. I mean, he's done a heck of a job. Coach McCullough's done a great job with him too.
All right, Jesse. So that's Marcus Freeman on Aneyas Williams. He's obviously singing the praises of Anias. We've seen more of him as this season has gone along. My question to you, though, is how does your confidence in Notre Dame's running game change if it's less Jeremiah Love? You mentioned Jadarian Price a minute ago. Obviously, Price, is the next in line behind Jeremiah Love. But if there's less Love and more Aneyas Williams in the game against Penn State.
Yeah, I think that ultimately what you're going to see is, heavy predominant Jadarian Price. I think you use Jeremiah Love sparingly or kind of for that knockout home run type hit. And then I think Aneyas Williams is going to be in his standard role, and it might be picked up a little bit depending on, how much you can squeeze out of Jeremiah Love. Earlier in the season, I held my breath every time he came on the field, and they love the guy on third down. He's in on just about every, third down, basically. What I'll say is, depending on what you get out of Jeremiah Love, I think this is a big game for Aneyas Williams to potentially pick up the slack of, what Jeremiah Love can and can't do, right? So I think you're going to use Jeremiah Love situationally. So I think that's naturally going to call for more Aneyas Williams. But when he's on the field, he just got to make sure to get his job done, right? Like, don't play outside of your means. Get your job done. And if you happen to break a big one or, catch a pass out of the backfield and do something with it, then so be it. But don't be looking to go out of your way to make the big play. First, make sure you've done your job. And if the big play happens, it happens. But again, I think it's going to be heavy dose of Jadarian Price, Jeremiah Love situationally, and Aneyas Williams in his typical role, and maybe if not more, if depending on what Jeremiah Love can and can't do.
I mean, he'll get the job done. I mean, the guy Williams is still averaging over 6 yards per carry. So like I have complete confidence that he can come in and do the job and and give them like at the very least be the change of pace type guy for Jadarian Price, but who can also make a play, especially between the tackles and stuff like that. So the biggest difference is obviously Jeremiah Love is the home run hitter of this crew. Like home run hitter goes Jeremiah Love and then Jadarian Price. They can both hit the home runs. And I agree with like what you're saying about Price. Like he could really, like I will not be surprised if we see a huge play out of Price in this game. So like from like the play to play, ability to move the chains, make some plays, I think Aneyas Williams can give you some really good things. It's just that you lose, a huge home run threat if Love is really limited in this game. So I mean that's the biggest difference to me. I think that they're still going to have a really good, really effective running game because Price can be the guy and has shown, that he is the guy that can still hit some home runs, but you're going to lose some of that home run factor if it's less Love and more Williams. Who's been Notre Dame's MVP through the first two college football playoff games? I'm interested to see what you think about this.
I wish I could say the entire defense.
I mean, I think you can make a case for Al Golden at the very least, right? Like if you were just going, like anyone, regardless of player or coach, the way Al Golden is called the defense man, like I think that you would, he'd be up there toward the top of the list.
I think I would go. The three guys, if I had to boil it down on defense, would be Drake Bowen, Xavier Watts, and Adon Schuler. And the reason why I say, like, Drake Bowen has been spectacular in run. He's been spectacular in pass. He's been spectacular on the edges in terms of, blowing up a lot of misdirection, screen plays. Then you started looking at Adon Schuler and the way he is in coverage. And really, I thought Adon Schuler was the MVP of the Indiana game because Indiana couldn't run inside. And then when they tried to run outside, they had Mr. Adon Schuler coming down and meeting him, at the line of scrimmage. The guy doesn't miss tackles. He's very physical. And then you bring in Xavier Watts, who's just roaming. He gets the interceptions. He has, he himself had big plays in the run game against Georgia. So I wish I could go the entire defense. But to me, it's got to be either Drake Bowen or Adon Schuler. And I can't pick between the two. So that's where I'm going to stop at.
I think Bowen has been, Bowen has been really good as well. Just like last week, even though he didn't have the huge tackle numbers, who did? Schuler and Watts. I agree. Like those would be my three. I would put Watts and Schuler slightly ahead of Bowen just because through two games, Schuler and Watts have combined for 30 tackles, between the two of them. And then you throw in the interception that Watts has, you throw in the big hit that caused the fumble that Schuler had, the fact that you've got those two thumpers. And, again, this is part of what, the Warren factor in this matchup is going to kind of test these safeties and, and test Notre Dame overall.
Because it's going to show how physical they are.
Yeah, that's right. But at the same time, just the ability that both of those guys have to cover up, and get downhill to the perimeter so well, that has basically completely negated the rushing games of the first two teams that they have seen. And I don't think Penn State is, other than, again, Ohio State, I don't think Penn State's seen anything like that, in a safety tandem that they're going to see this week. And I think that is something that's really going to catch some of their guys off guard.
Yeah, and I guess the part that's crazy to me about Schuler is he's one of the smallest guys on the field, and with them playing so much cover one, with Watts being the cover guy in the back, Schuler is forced to play down in the box all the time and on the perimeter, and you wouldn't know it because of how he plays like a linebacker, even though he's got the speed and size of a safety. And one small thing, and it's completely random, I noticed this the other day when someone posted maybe a photo or a video. There's a Notre Dame football account. Do you notice that Don Schuler wears an Apple Watch during the whole game?
I didn't.
Yeah, I don't know.
Interesting.
I've seen guys do it before, and honestly, I just don't know if it's a comfort thing, a style thing. Maybe it's like a heart track. They use it for their heart tracking or something. I have no.
Usually they wear those catapult things underneath that have all that stuff, so you don't have to worry about an Apple Watch.
I guess my question to you is in every sport I played, how would that not be uncomfortable? You know what I mean? I feel
well, especially when you're tackling, you would think it would fall off your wrist at some point.
Right. It would fall. And it's I feel like I would just feel it. Right. And the chance of it breaking. I mean, I guess these guys don't care. They probably could get a new one the next day if they needed, but still it's I don't know. It just feels weird. And I had a teammate who did it in college, and every time I was like, dude, what are you doing? Just take off your stupid Apple Watch.
I hadn't noticed that. I'll have to pay closer attention to the videos, I guess.
Okay, it's something super minute, but I noticed it, and it just got me thinking.
Fill in the blank. If the knock on Penn State head coach James Franklin is that he doesn't win big games, that means blank after his first two playoff wins.
It means he's taking a step in the right direction, but what's the biggest thing we've kind of used as our argument in this show is we weren't overly impressed with SMU and Boise State, and they probably wouldn't be playoff teams in a traditional format, right? And so,
Yeah.
yes, you have these playoff wins and you won more high leverage kind of games, but it's still only a step in the right direction because it was only SMU, who was a Group of 5 team last year, and Boise State, who was the Group of 5 champion this year. I got to see you play the big boys that are physical and fast, like Ohio State, Michigan, all the teams that beat you year in and year out. Notre Dame hopefully follows that trend, but I just got to see more before I'm ready to say James Franklin has reversed his big game narrative.
Yeah, I don't think that he has won a big game still. I mean, it's nice that he's won a couple of playoff games, but I don't think that you can truly call either one of them big wins. Like he has not beaten anything that amounts to a tradition. He hasn't beaten a Georgia yet. We talked about that off the top of the show. The fact that Notre Dame had to beat Georgia last week and Penn State had to beat Boise State. There's a big difference there.
There's a huge difference. And again, like James Franklin versus Michigan and Ohio State, like how many games has he won against those two schools in his entire tenure?
Right.
I think he's 4-16, but like,
would you feel the same about Notre Dame if they had beaten Indiana and followed that with a win over Boise State?
Yeah, because they haven't played a traditional powerhouse yet.
Right. That's what I mean. Like you feel we all feel differently about Notre Dame right now because it was Georgia.
Because it was Georgia. Oh, 100%.
There's a big difference between Georgia and Boise State, and that's the point. Like James Franklin, again, you won the games. Like you can only play who's in front of you. Great. But he's 4-16 combined against Ohio State and Michigan in his career. And he's only won about 30% of his games against ranked teams. Complete flip for Marcus Freeman in the short time that he's been head coach. What does he do? He wins big games. Like he beats ranked teams. So I feel like, like if that's the knock on James Franklin, I think we're still going to be talking about that on Friday. I'm not guaranteeing anything right now, but that's what I think is going to happen. Like I said earlier, I see a lot of similarities between Franklin's current Penn State program and, the way Brian Kelly's teams were built and coached when Brian Kelly was still at Notre Dame.
You were good enough to win the games you were supposed to.
The games you're supposed
to.
Lost
a lot of close games where you maybe were a slight underdog.
Yep, exactly. All right, here's Marcus Freeman on Viper defensive end, Junior Tuihalamaka, who, of course, had a sack last week in the win over Georgia.
Yeah, that's wild, man. I just wish that you could show everybody in your program what the future is when we start. Junior's a great example that I'm going to talk about now, but it could be utilized for so many guys in our program that, after fall camp, he was the third Viper. And he worked, and I'm sure there was probably people in his ear saying, maybe you want to redshirt and go into the portal. And he just is committed to this place, committed to getting better and working, not worrying about how many plays he's playing. And now you're talking about the biggest games of the year. This dude is making game-changing plays. And so I think I said this after the game, we cannot be obsessed with the role as much as the work you put into the role you're given. Because if you do that, you're going to be a guy like Junior, and in the biggest moments of the year, you've just improved because you put everything into the roles that have been determined for you all season, and now you're making plays in the Sugar Bowl. And I love it, man. I love it for him. I love the example that he sets for our entire program.
All right, so fill in the blank. Notre Dame needs blank from Junior Tuihalamaka and RJ Oben this week.
Notre Dame needs pressures from Junior Tuihalamaka and RJ Oben. And the reason why I say pressures is I don't care about sacks. Yes, those are nice, and strip sacks are obviously even better. But you just need pressures, quarterback hurries, quarterback hits. Get the ball out of Aller's hands and make him uncomfortable. That's their entire job, in my opinion. The sacks are like an added bonus. But if you can hurry up Aller and you can make pocket collapse on him as he's trying to read, blitzes that are coming in his face. You got Xavier Watts roaming in the back. I just think that these guys have to get constant pressures. Again, quarterback hits, quarterback hurries,
Right.
all night long. And before we go on, I have to toot my own horn here, because if there was anyone that had Junior Tuihalamaka, on their big board at the beginning of the season, it was this guy.
It was you. I mean,
I know it took a couple injuries.
Took a while for the big play. That's right. Some injuries.
Took a couple injuries, but the man has been consistent and was obviously a difference maker against Georgia. So
he was.
My stock is at an all-time high right now.
Johnny, like living in the backfield, not only making the sack, but getting to that fumble, recovering the fumble that led to the touchdown before halftime. And I agree with you. They just need consistent pressures from these guys and wherever it comes. And again, I think Bryce Young is going to be a factor in this game as well because of that twitchiness that he has. Hats off to Tuihalamaka for, like Marcus Freeman was saying, for hanging in there and and making the plays that he's made. What were you going to say?
What's funny about Bryce Young is I had some friends in the group chat who were, texting me, who is this 30 guy? When he ran into the punter the first time, and then the second time they ran into him, they're like, this guy needs to be sent to the locker room and shouldn't come back. And then he had the offside penalty a couple drives later, and they were like,
didn't start off.
They need to kick this guy out of the stadium. But it's like, if they do that, who do they got at defensive end at this point? You're kind of, it is what it is. And I'm sure Marcus Freeman had a long talk with Bryce Young, but still, it's like, I mean, you talk about just the amount of plug and play along this entire defensive line this season. It's just extremely, extremely impressive. And I think this is why it's so important to build depth all the way through 1 through 3, because this is why you need it for players like Junior, for players like Bryce Young, for guys who might not at the beginning of the season, who you thought were going to be, impact players. They're going to get their shot down the road. You need depth, and especially with injuries, you need these type of players. So, hats off to a guy like Junior Tuihalamaka for staying engaged the entire season, because I know what that feeling is like when you feel like you're kind of buried on the depth chart. You don't know what you're going to do. You're obviously unhappy, but, I think him moving to Viper was the best situation for him, because it combines, he's a little bit undersized, but it utilizes his speed and athleticism coming off the edge. And then you look at who's backfilling at linebacker at Kaiser, Bowen, Osbury, Sneed. There's no way Junior was going to get playing time over those guys.
That's what, like Tommy is saying, that they did Junior wrong by moving him to Viper. I think that this was the best shot for him to be, to be able to have a role on this team was making that move because of what you just said. I mean, look at KVA, Osbury, and Bowen alone, and then you've got Sneed in there as well, and Kaiser is still here. I just don't think that he would have been able to carve himself out a role had he stayed there at linebacker. I think that moving to where he did was the best path for him. And, again, he's plugged away and he's hung in there and he's made the best of it over the course of this season. And he's a contributor on a team that's in the semifinals and has a really good chance to make it to the championship game this week. Phil, let me go to the next one. Here's Marcus Freeman on Irish nickelback Jordan Clark.
Man, Jordan is tough. My evaluation of Jordan was the film that I watched. He's a dang good football player, and he's tough because I did hear about the injuries, and he played through a lot of injuries. And a guy willing to play when he doesn't feel 100% speaks volumes about the competitiveness of that individual. Then he gets here in his leadership traits, his the ability to make people in that room better, his athleticism, his coverage skills. He's a guy that had shown at Arizona State to play multiple different positions. And, the way he's improved that room, I think that's probably a bigger impact than anything. He came here to compete for championships and to put himself in a better opportunity to go to the NFL. But I think what he's done for this program far exceeds that. And he's made this program better, and we're dang glad that he's a part of our defense.
Well, you heard from Marcus Freeman there. Fill in the blank, though, Jesse. Jordan Clark has been blank for the Irish this year.
An exceptional added bonus because of a couple of things. One, he's a tremendous nickel player when you need to, get into some second and third and long obvious passing situations. But then you start looking at Benjamin Morrison, injury, and then you look at not Minchie, the cornerback who is now transferring or left the team.
Jaden Mickey. Yeah.
Mickey. I knew it wasn't Minchie. So when you combine those things at the beginning of the season, you're like, wow, we've added an exceptional nickel guy who provides some depth, and that's exactly what he's turned into. With these injuries and with Mickey leaving the team, his role has increased, right? And so not only is he a fantastic leader, a tremendous hard worker, he was again going to provide a lot of depth in the secondary, but now he's become one of those guys who is predominantly out there every series, and so it feels like the more you put on his plate, the better he gets, and those are the type of players that you want on defenses. The more we give you, the better you perform.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think you pretty much hit it on the head. I think that he has generally flown under the radar because of the fact that you've got Xavier Watson and Don Schuler, just playing out of their minds the way they are, because of the fact that, you've also got Leonard Moore, a true freshman, coming in and playing the way he has. But I mean, especially like with the Mickey thing, because like right after Mickey, that was the Louisville game, and Jordan Clark had to play a lot of snaps, in that Louisville game. And he's ended up playing a lot of snaps over the course of this season. He played 71 snaps against Louisville and really showed, the versatility that he had, and he's played a lot. And, I think what always impresses me is like all of a sudden, like you see like this short pass or whatever, and then you just see this flash, whether it's like a blue flash when they're wearing their blue uniforms or a white flash when they're wearing their white uniforms, and it's like boom, and there's just this big hit. It's like, who was that? And he gets up and it's number one, and it's like he has just brought them so much. He flies around, makes quick decisions, comes up with the big hits, lays the wood when he gets the chance, all those different things. What do you think of like this potential, and it kind of surprised me that like he's played the fifth most snaps of anyone on the defense, and it's behind Watts, Schuler, Gray, and Moore as well. Like this particular matchup, like they use so much of Warren. Like, do you think we maybe see less of Jordan Clark against Penn State this week?
I actually think that, we were going over that bracket scheme earlier a bit on the whiteboard.
You think he could be a factor in that?
I think he could, because when you get into some nickel packages on, third and long, you're going to get rid of one of those linebackers. And I guarantee one of the other linebackers is going to be bringing pressure. And so I think you might see a bracket with Clark underneath and Xavier Watts over top in those more passing down situations. But like 1st and 10, I think that's when you'll see a traditional, linebacker and Watts in the bracket coverage. But when they get into nickel packages and it becomes a more obvious passing down, I think Clark's going to be used to bracket Warren quite a bit.
Okay. All right. I think we're all kind of waiting to see. We're interested to see, maybe some more nervous than others to see exactly, how Notre Dame goes about defending Tyler Warren. I mean, that's obviously, like, of all the passing matchups, that's the biggest one for Penn State is how Notre Dame is at least able to limit that. Can they limit it to the extent of Ohio State with 3 catches for 45 yards? I don't know about that, but I mean, even if it's like 6 for 60 yards, especially if you keep him out of the end zone, I think that's a huge win, don't you?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very similar to Ohio State, because Ohio State's defense is built a lot like Notre Dame's. I think Notre Dame has better linebackers, better speed and physicality at linebacker. But when you look at the secondary, I mean, they play a ton of cover one man. They press up in man. And who did they have at safety? Caleb Downs. Who's Notre Dame's Caleb Downs? Xavier Watts. We're talking about 2 of the best safeties in the entire country, right? And so I just see a lot of mirrors between Ohio State and Notre Dame. And I think it's going to replicate, how Penn State performed as well on the field on Thursday.
Notre Dame players, of course, again, wearing their names on the back of their jerseys. They've done it for both games so far. Do you buy or sell always putting names on the jersey for the Fighting Irish?
To me, honestly, I don't care. But in terms of the NIL era, I do think that putting the names on the jerseys makes more sense. And I don't know if you saw it today, but a lot of these guys were posting on Twitter this new ROY thing, basically return on yourself. And it's a new NIL collective where basically
I had not
fans
seen
can go in and basically, donate money to that player. And so what's the best way to know who a player is? If you slap their
name on the jersey.
you
That's
slap their
right.
last name on the back of the jersey. So I do think with the NIL, I would like to see it a little bit more because it allows these players to get the maximum amount of exposure. But while we're on the jersey question, this is already a week-to-week thing.
They're wearing white. They're wearing white.
I know, but are you all white? Or are you going gold pants?
Good question. They've gone traditional with each of the first two games. Personally, I'd like to see them bust out the green numbers.
I know
on the white. That'd be my call, but I don't get to make the call.
I think they're just going to go traditional.
I haven't seen any media day photos from today. I know that they were doing some media stuff down there in Miami today, but I haven't seen any photos come of that. So, I mean, that'll tell you if they were wearing their jerseys for the media day. That's what it'll end up being. But I completely agree. Like with NIL, I think that's the way to go going forward. I mean, the other teams, the basketball teams, wear names on their back. Why not? Why not let football? I mean, I realize the tradition and it's kind of a reward for the postseason when they put the names on. But I think that with NIL and just kind of like what you just talked about right there, I think that's every reason to just let them put the names on the back. Have you seen the Charles Du, who of course is from Beijing? Have you seen? Yeah. They put the Mandarin on. They let him. They do it in Mandarin. I think that's a pretty cool little touch that they've got for him.
As do I. I think it just creates more exposure for the player, and that's what the whole NIL is about.
Maybe they need to, women's basketball needs to let Kate Koval go Cyrillic. Since she's from Ukraine and do a little Cyrillic on the back of hers. I think that'd be a nice little touch as well. Fill in the blank. The Chicago Bears requesting permission to interview Dallas Cowboys head coach Mike McCarthy is blank.
Is meh. I don't know why you're bringing up this Cowboys discourse. They're completely
people
out
are actually
of my
inquiring.
mind.
People inquiring minds want to hear you and I commiserate on the Cowboys. I think from time to time.
I don't want to get into this. I'm so happy with where Notre Dame is at. I could care less about the Cowboys at this point in my life. Like when you talk about, let's be honest here. In the last 29 years, you talk about two programs, teams, whatever you want to call it, that were kind of mirror of each other, haven't won the big game. Notre Dame just won its biggest game ever as me being a Notre Dame fan. They actually have kind of finally, flipped the script in some regard. Here's what I'm going to say. The only thing that pisses me off about this whole situation is Jerry Jones is going to wait a maximum amount of time possible and act like people care about Mike McCarthy and all these things. The Bears inquired, and he hasn't even granted them permission to speak to him. And so all that's going to happen is Jerry Jones is going to, all these people like Mike McCarthy, and there's interest in Mike McCarthy. And he's going to wait it out, and he's going to keep Mike McCarthy, and I'm going to have to go through this whole cycle again. And so when you talk about the Cowboys and Jerry Jones, they just do everything
backwards.
Everything is done backwards for no reason. And it's done for a reason because all Jerry cares about is the publicity that the Cowboys get, not how good of a team they are or how many wins they have or their playoff success or if they can actually win a Super Bowl. He cares that people are clicking and talking about the Cowboys every day. And so what do? You do everything backwards that you're supposed to. So again, I don't care. The Bears aren't going to hire Mike McCarthy, but Jerry Jones is going to drag this thing out, act like Mike McCarthy is this hot commodity, and then sign him. And it's just going to be a miserable cycle all over again.
Yes. And you will be the one watching Dallas Cowboys football.
You will too.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you will.
If Mike McCarthy is still the head coach, I will not be watching.
You will be watching.
I can guarantee you. Like maybe by game 8, if they actually play well. I don't need to watch soft football. They're the 10-man team. They need a heart. They don't have a heart, and I don't want to hear Jerry Jones talking about, well, he overcame and they played better, even with Dak out. And, okay, how about the team that just got bludgeoned by New Orleans, and then New Orleans went on to lose 7 games after that? That's when Dak was still healthy. That's the true Dallas Cowboys Mike McCarthy team. I don't need any of that. Mike Vrabel is available. Pete Carroll is available. I'd rather eat a snack with Rex Ryan, for that matter. There are a million guys I would rather have than Mike McCarthy. But you're exactly right. Jerry Jones is going to take this. Well, there's interest in this guy, so how can I let him go now? And that's what it's going to be. And I'm not going to watch it, Jesse. I can guarantee you that. I will not watch it.
We'll see.
Not. The Raiders fired head coach Antonio Pierce today. Do you buy or sell Pierce's Exhibit A while you shouldn't hire the interim coach as your head coach?
Sell. I mean, the teams are firing Pierce. They're firing the Patriots fired Mayo. Like, what can you actually gain in 1 year? Like, again, Dan Campbell went 4-13 in his first year, and look where he's at now. How can you truly say that giving a coach 1 season is an ample amount of time to establish culture, kind of make a shift in whatever direction they want to see? I just don't think you get tangible results out of 1 year and then firing a guy. I think you are worse off by hitting the restart button only after 1 year. So I think it's more of a reflection of ownership and the organization than it is the head coach.
I would definitely agree with that.
The Raiders have been absolute dog since probably 2002, right? Like they've got 2 playoff appearances, I think, in the last 20 years. I mean, they've just been bad. And so I think it's laughable that these organizations and owners have to find a scapegoat and say, you know what, we're going to fire the coach after 1 year, after they did this whole vetting process and hired the coach themselves. So I think it's completely garbage. And I think coaches deserve more than 1 year to prove themselves.
Even Gerard Mayo, I think Mayo, he wasn't an interim. So this is separate from the conversation, but he also got fired after 1 year. He felt like he needed to go. Everything about that situation, just talking out loud about how the team, doesn't play hard enough, speaking into cameras and, just all the weird things and weird decisions that he made, and then costing them the number 1 pick by actually winning the other day. That to me is much more inexcusable than anything that Antonio Pierce did. I do feel like, you're right. But in general, the Raiders situation, going back to when Al Davis was still alive, and obviously Mark Davis is his son, and he still owns it. Those organizations, the dysfunction when you talk about Cowboys, Raiders, it is very similar in those 2 organizations. And quite frankly, I don't think it's that far behind with the Chicago Bears, in terms of, you've got this longtime family ownership and the whole thing. So yeah, I don't think the dysfunction is I think the dysfunction is fairly similar in all 3 of those situations, honestly. All right. I think that's going to do it for tonight. Brian and Tyler have a show coming up. Brian getting into Miami. I don't know exactly when it's going to start. I don't know if they know exactly when it's going to start. All I heard was once Brian got situated down in Miami in his hotel, then they would be starting their show. So they've got a show coming up tonight as well. So looking forward to that. Jess, hope you're feeling better soon. I think we're all going to be here on Friday, day after the Orange Bowl. You and me and Vince together for a little bit.
I will be here for Friday, and I'm just hoping I feel better at that point.
What did I say? Did I say Tyler? Yeah, Trevor is obviously what I meant, because no one's ever misspoken, on this show or anywhere else in their life. Right. Brian and Trevor, obviously. Brian and Trevor. All right. A couple quick things, though. Beefeater, great to meet you, too. I don't know if Beefeater is still hanging around. I mentioned Beefeater on the show yesterday. 3 different IB guys. All 2 of them came up to me, and Beefeater was one of them. That's not his real name, by the way. But him, Andre, and Matt, met them out in Chapel Hill. And then David wants to know how your back is doing. He said you never got back to him.
Oh, back is doing great. It just occasionally will feel kind of out of whack, but I think that has to do with the majority of like when I'm bouncing around and sleeping on like 4 different beds in a span of 2 weeks is when it feels its worst.
All right. Good news. Jules, thanks for the reminder. Subscribe, like, all that good stuff. And if you're listening on the podcast platform, you might notice that you're not hearing some of the stuff that you used to hear for a long time. Because as Brian tweeted about yesterday, we are on a new podcast platform. We are now part of the Believe podcast network. And from everything that I've seen, things have been going very well so far. So we appreciate Believe and glad to be a part of that network. Now, Jesse, great stuff on the whiteboard. Great stuff as always. Great input from the chat, especially once we got rid of the Penn State troll. So I think we had a lot better show after that. But we will talk to you tomorrow. One more show for us before Orange Bowl, Notre Dame, Penn State on Thursday. Hit the like button, and we'll talk to you later. Ivy Nation Sports Talk.